welcome into this episode of Mike on the Mic Sports. As always, for every and all episodes of Mike on the Mic Sports, I'm your host, Michael McKenzie, and we're talking about the Super Bowl today. It's only one topic we're discussing today, and that is the Super Bowl this coming Sunday between the Chiefs and the Eagles. I'm recording this on February 4th, the Tuesday before the Super Bowl. It'll probably be uploaded on February 5th, the Wednesday before the big game. And I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to jump right into the discussion here because I think this is the least anticipated Super Bowl in a number of years. I can't remember going into a Super Bowl with lower anticipation for the game than this year because it's two fan bases, it's two teams, two sides of the aisle here that that the other 30 NFL fan bases don't like. Because we'll look at the AFC side first with the Kansas City Chiefs. You got a team that's made the AFC Championship game 7 consecutive years. They've made the Super Bowl 5 of the last 6 years. They're going for their third consecutive championship. The three-peat, as a lot of people like to call it. Jim Nantz last week on that broadcast at the end of the game when it was obvious the Chiefs were going to end up beating the Bills, started throwing out some potential trademark terms and ideas for Kansas City merchandise if they win the three chief or the chief Pete, whatever you want to call it. Kansas City's going for it. They're one win away from completing NFL history. And I get it. We all like to be witnesses to history. But this is starting to border on a dynasty. I wouldn't even say border anymore. This is a dynasty that has reached the level the New England Patriots reached at the height of their powers with Belichick and Brady, when at that point, the 2010s, it was a foregone conclusion that the Patriots would be in the AFC Championship game. It was almost a foregone conclusion that the AFC was going to run through Foxborough, and it was going to be really tough. It was going to take a team's best game and then some to knock off the Patriots and head to the Super Bowl, win the AFC, win the Super Bowl, whatever. That is what the Chiefs have accomplished. They've strived for it since Patrick Mahomes' rookie season, and it took one AFC Championship loss in that season. I shouldn't say Mahomes' rookie season. The first season that he started. They've been striving for that since his first season when he won the MVP through 55 touchdown passes. They've been after that season, it was evident that they had the quarterback to get to Patriots level. Could they get the other pieces, the head coach, the coordinators, the supporting cast? It didn't take them long at all. The next year, they won the Super Bowl. It didn't take them long at all to reach that status. And it really does feel like, because we went from one generational, what felt like dynasty, to another generational dynasty, two dynasties with dominance that we've rarely ever seen, probably haven't ever seen in the NFL, not just in our lifetimes, but in the NFL. I can't remember a time as a football fan when there wasn't an AFC dynasty running the sport, because for my entire childhood, I could remember the Patriots really ran football. It was going to take your best game to beat New England. And it was going to feel like your Super Bowl. You were going to feel on top of the world when you beat the Patriots at the height of their powers. We didn't have any downtime between the Patriots and the Chiefs, went right from one to the other. So that's the one side of the aisle that we're not excited really to watch. The other side of the aisle is what I'd coin the most annoying fan base in the NFL, and I think 30 other NFL fan bases would agree with me. Because no matter what, if you're especially an opposing fan going to Philadelphia to watch your team play on the road, you're not going to have a pleasant experience. I mean, your life is going to be made miserable by Philadelphia sports fans. I have not heard one person go to Philadelphia to watch their team play the Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field and come back with a good story to tell. I did at a younger age go to a Pirates at Phillies game. I didn't have any good experiences. I didn't have any bad experiences with Philly sports fans. So the one game I went to in Philly, when my team was playing on the road there, I didn't have any bad or good experiences. It was a neutral thing. I didn't really have much interaction with the Philly sports fans, but I've heard nothing but terrible stories about fans that go to Philadelphia to watch their team play the Eagles, win or lose. They come back with a terrible story, or at the very least, they don't have a good story. And no matter what happens for the Eagles, it really feels like that fan base goes over the top. I love passionate fan bases. I love fans that live and die with their teams. I live and die with my teams, other than the Phoenix Suns, obviously. But again, that might be a deeper discussion for another day. But this is a fan base that takes living and dying with their team to an extreme that doesn't even seem fun. Because you go back to the 2 Super Bowls they were in recently, back in 2018 against the New England Patriots, the Nick Foles, the magical run, they pulled off one of the biggest upsets in Super Bowl history. That fan base went rabid, destroying the city. You look at the Super Bowl they lost a couple of years ago to Kansas City. It was this matchup 2 years ago. What happened when the Eagles lost? Destruction in the city. They take that extreme of living and dying with your team to an extreme level that again, it doesn't seem fun. And then you look at the Eagles themselves on the team, they don't have very many likable personalities. I liked Jalen Hurts in the past, but ever since he lost that Super Bowl a couple of years ago, I think he's become a bit of a cornball. To put it lightly, I think he's become a cornball. I don't like the personality change that we saw with Jalen Hurts, because there was a clear personality change when he lost that Super Bowl. I'm not a fan of it. AJ Brown, I just think the antics are a little much. And as a Steelers fan, I've seen way too many receiver antics to not almost overreact or think 10 different ways about receiver antics, because you go back to Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, George Pickens. The list goes on with the Steelers. So just that might be a personal thing for me. Just some of the antics that we saw with AJ Brown earlier this year. I'm not necessarily a big fan of that. Their defense has a lot of guys that I don't think necessarily are good people. I don't like CJ Gardner Johnson. I hate Jalen Carter. There's just not a lot of likable personalities on that Eagles team. I'd say it's Saquon Barkley. Maybe that's it. And I didn't even get to the least likable person on that Eagles team. Their head coach, Nick Sirianni. Super arrogant. Really does embody that fan base as the head coach. Just a super arrogant guy that I don't really like or appreciate at all. So I'm not a fan of Sirianni. Really on the Eagles, the only player I'm a fan of, I'd probably say, is Saquon Barkley. So with that being said, looking at the two sides of the aisle here for this Super Bowl, I don't like either of them. I am in the boat that I think 95% of the 30 fan bases that aren't in the Super Bowl, I'm in that same boat. I'm not excited. That's not to say I'm not gonna watch the Super Bowl. I'm going to watch the Super Bowl. There will never be a year that I'm not watching the Super Bowl unless I've got more important obligations going on during the Super Bowl, which will probably be a rare occurrence in my life if it ever occurs. But I'm still watching the Super Bowl this year because I'm going to be free on Sunday night, so I'm going to watch it. So anybody that tells you they're not watching the Super Bowl, they're either lying or not a real football fan. Because depending on even if you hate both of the teams in the Super Bowl, you're going to watch it. So, with that being said, there's a lot of different aspects to this game that I'm going to break down now before I give my pick on the Super Bowl. First, obviously, you got to talk about quarterback in this game because Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the world, always finds ways to win. And I don't really think any more needs to be said that for Patrick Mahomes. I really want to talk about Jalen Hurts here because he had one of the best single game performances in Super Bowl history when these two teams met back in 2022. Well, the 2022 to 2023 season, the game was officially in the year 2023, but you get my point. He had a really good game. 3 rushing touchdowns, over 300 yards passing, threw for another touchdown. He balled out that game. He played extremely well 2 years ago. It obviously wasn't enough, even though he put up 35 points, because the Chiefs ended up putting up 38 points. But this is the game Jalen Hurts changed his personality for 2 years ago. This is the game he's been grinding towards, he's been working towards. I don't think he's the last 2 years been as good as he was not only in that game, that Super Bowl 2 years ago, but as good as he was that season. Because going into last year, the 2023 to 24 season, a lot of people, including myself, had Jalen Hurts as a top 5 quarterback. I can confidently say no smart has Jalen Hurts in their top 5 NFL quarterbacks 2 years later. So I don't think in either of these 2 seasons since that Super Bowl loss, Jalen Hurts has lived up to that top 5 billing, lived up to that same level of play. I don't think he has, but he's gotten back to the Super Bowl. His team has gotten back there. And again, this is the game that 2 years ago when Jalen Hurts lost it, he changed his entire personality. Became the cornball I called him about 4 minutes ago. Just completely changed his personality, his style, maybe not his play style, but the style of person he is. He's not the same guy that lost the Super Bowl 2 years ago, for better or for worse. We'll find out on Sunday whether that was for better or for worse. But it's interesting that Jalen Hurts got back to this game, but a lot of people, and I think rightfully so, aren't giving him a lot of credit for it. That's not to say he's played terrible in the playoffs. That's not to say he played terrible this season. He had a solid season. He's had a solid playoff run. But I don't think anybody can look at me or look at anybody else with a straight face and say that the Eagles are in this position without Saquon Barkley, because they're not. Saquon Barkley is the reason the Eagles are in this position. And I also think Saquon Barkley single-handedly saved the running back position. We'll get into that discussion and a whole breakdown of Saquon versus the Chiefs' run defense here in a few moments. But Jalen Hurts got back here almost on the back of a running back and a really good defense. I think of all the things that of all the aspects of football, I think that hurts the Eagles quarterback, their passing game, pretty low on the list of things that got them here. Obviously, number 1 is Saquon Barkley. We'll put him here, make sure he's in the frame. 2, probably offensive line, because they've held up for Hurts as well as creating a lot of running lanes for Barkley. I'd probably put front 7 about here. Not a lot of teams have run on the Eagles, and they get really good pass rush every game. Then I'd probably put passing game and Jalen Hurts, and then below that, secondary. And you could argue that Jalen Hurts and that secondary are interchangeable. So, despite being one of the main reasons the Eagles got to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, now it's completely flip-flopped. Jalen Hurts is not the reason they got here. He's barely a reason they got here. Again, that's not to shred him to pieces. That's not to say his playoff run was awful. That's not to say his regular season was awful. That's just to say he's not one of the main reasons, not one of the big reasons they got to this point. So the question is, how does Jalen Hurts respond? How does he perform in this game? I'm interested to see because again, I'll reiterate the point I've made this talking segment. Hurts changed his personality 2 years ago after losing this game. He's back. Did that personality change actually mean something? Or did he waste the last 2 years becoming one of the biggest cornballs among the NFL, among NFL quarterbacks, among NFL players? I'm interested to see how Jalen Hurts comes out and play this game. But he's not going to be the focal point of this offense. It's going to be the guy that has been the focal point of that Eagles offense in Saquon Barkley. Similar to Patrick Mahomes, not much needs to be said about Saquon Barkley. I think he single-handedly saved the running back position because he was the face of that running back discussion a couple of years ago about do you franchise tag him? Do you give him the long-term deal, or has his shelf life run up despite not showing any signs that his shelf life was up? Because the new thought process in the NFL was that running backs past the age of about 27 or 28 didn't have much use, and that a good running back didn't mean anything. And this is not to completely invalidate that argument, because it's not like the Eagles have a poor offensive line. They have a really good offensive line. But the value of an elite running back like Saquon Barkley showed this entire season. showed why you give running backs, you still should be willing to give them longer term deals. Not just 1-year deals, not just franchise tags and just try to plug and play at the running back position. An elite running back brings your offense, it could, from here to here, and that's what Saquon Barkley did for the Eagles this year. There's no doubting that. Because without Saquon Barkley, the Eagles are not in this position. Maybe they still win the NFC East because outside of Washington, there was no competition for that division. I don't think they make the NFC Championship game, and they in turn don't make the Super Bowl. Barkley brought them from here to here because they were here 2 years ago, fell off, needed to get back up here, needed to make that jump back. Saquon Barkley helped them make that jump. I think he might have been the sole reason to help them make that jump. So with that being said, does he get his against the Chiefs, and how much of his does he get? Trying to speak in metaphorical terms here. How good does Saquon Barkley play in this game against a really good Chiefs front seven led by Chris Jones? Nick Bolton had a big Super Bowl a couple of years ago against these guys, and Steve Spagnuolo, probably the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. Who wins that chess match? Because it's not going to be the case where one side is completely shut down, plays poorly, while the other side dominates. It's not going to be a situation where Saquon and the Eagles' run game is playing chess, the Chiefs and their front seven, their run defense is playing checkers, or vice versa. That's not going to be the case. These are the running game for the Eagles and the front seven for the Chiefs. They are going to be playing chess against one another, and that's going to be a fun matchup to watch. Who wins that? And I think whoever wins that probably wins this game. If Saquon gets his 150, 175 yards, pair of touchdowns, I think the Eagles win this game. If Saquon is relegated to 80, 75 yards, 90 yards, kind of like Christian McCaffrey was last year, maybe one touchdown, but that's it. They force Jalen Hurts to have to win this game again. I think the Chiefs win this. So I think it really is going to come down to that chess match between the Eagles offensive line is Saquon Barkley and the Chiefs front seven. It's going to come down to that. I think this game 100% boils down to that matchup. There are a lot of other aspects to talk about this game. How does Sirianni coach? How aggressive is he? How passive is he? What is his style of play? What is his overall game plan? How does he manage the game late in this one if it's a ball game and one team isn't blowing out the other, which I don't anticipate happening? Andy Reid, he's gonna have a good game, call good plays. I have no doubts about that. How good is Patrick Mahomes in this game? I have no doubt he's gonna be good, but he's been shaky this year. These playoff performances, yes, he's made really good throws, a time here and a time there, but he hasn't really put together a full, really good game against either the Texans or the Bills. A lot of his big time throws were really good play calls by Andy Reid and schemed plays open. So how good is Patrick Mahomes in this game? He struggled early against the 49ers last year. His defense kept him in that game for him late to pull through. How good is Mahomes in this game? I think it boils down that is one of the things that it's going to come down to. How good is the Eagles secondary? No, there's no bona fide stud wide receiver in this Chiefs receiving core, but they still got Travis Kelce, who's always going to come through in playoff games with Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes is going to find some guys. Juju Smith-Schuster had a big Super Bowl a couple of years ago. He made a couple of big catches against the Bills. Xavier Worthy's starting to get a lot more plays schemed for him, a lot more touches schemed for him in this Andy Reid offense. DeAndre Hopkins, Marquise Brown. Those are reliable guys that Mahomes can go to on third down. How does the Eagles secondary hold up against that? How do they try to combat Patrick Mahomes? Or how do they try to set up their front seven to disrupt this game? Because if they can hold up in coverage and let the front seven disrupt the passing game or create a turnover or two, that very well could be the difference in this game. Jalen Hurts. And the last two things we're going to mention, the things we talked about at length. Jalen Hurts. What's he like in this game? The game he changed his entire personality for 2 years ago. How does he bounce back and perform in the spot he's grinded to get back to for 2 years? And then the chess match of Saquon and the Eagles offensive line versus Steve Spagnuolo and the Chiefs front seven. Those are the things I think this game comes down to. What I think ends up happening, I think Saquon is held in that lower 100s to 90 to 80 rushing yard mark, maybe 2 touchdowns. I'm saying 1. Relegated to similar stats we saw Christian McCaffrey have in this game last year. Mahomes is going to make a few throws here and there. He's not going to play a perfect game, but he's going to play a good enough game like he usually does. And I do think the Chiefs are going to three-peat. And I said it at the beginning of the season that I am not willing to pick against Kansas City, especially in the playoffs, until somebody beats them in the playoffs. It hasn't happened yet. Their only loss this season with all their starters in was on the road to Buffalo in the regular season, a game which they avenged in the AFC Championship game. So I'm not going against Mahomes. I made the mistake of betting against Brady way too many times as a kid. My younger self made too many mistakes in betting against the Patriots and Tom Brady. I am wiser, I'd like to believe now, and I am not going to make that same mistake of betting against an all-time great quarterback when he's given me no reason to bet against him. I'm going Mahomes and I'm going the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl. And the discussions that follow, I'm not sure. Are we talking about the referees in this game? Are we talking about Jalen Hurts? Are we talking about Mahomes, Reed? Is Spagnola going to start getting head coaching offers? Is he going to go take that Saints job that's still open at this point in time? I don't know what our main discussion is after the season, but all I know is that the big thing, the one thing that will be undisputable fact is that the Chiefs are on the verge of creating the greatest dynasty in NFL history because the three-peat has never been done before. If they do it, they've got a case already for the greatest dynasty in NFL history. And at worst, they will be well on their way to earning that title. I'll put it that way. That wraps it up for this episode of Mike on the Mic Sports. Thank you so much for tuning into this one. Still a while till baseball season starts. The Luka trade, I think it's a little too old of news, so I'm not really going to dive into that. We'll dive into some college basketball talk, maybe a little NBA talk here in the month of February until March starts and spring training rolls around. So make sure to stay tuned for that here on the Mike on the Mic YouTube, the Mike on the Mic Sports YouTube channel. Again, make sure to follow me on X at the same handle in the description and follow me on TikTok at Pro Sports Opinions. Again, thank you for tuning in and have a great night.